Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your ticker guy coming at you from wonderful Niceville, Florida. I want to talk to you about Ben Bernanke and his band of merry men, and specifically the question that I got into him on PBS and his response. Without further ado, here we go.
Got an email, Mr. Chairman. This is from Carl Denninger in Niceville, Florida. Question is, since this crisis began with people unable to pay their bills and continues to be marked by this problem, how does expanding credit solve the problem? Isn't that going to be like giving a drunk a bottle of whiskey and calling him cured?
Well, we have a case here of overreaction. It's true to some extent that this crisis was caused by too much credit, credit that was too risky, too easy. That's all true, but the financial crisis has caused a huge reaction in the other direction. And if you have a small business or you've tried to get a loan, you know that credit is very, very tight right now. We need to have a sort of a middle course between credit that is excessively risky, excessively easy, and credit which is so tight that legitimate borrowers can't get credit. The Federal Reserve has been working hard on this in a lot of ways. First, we've cut interest rates all the way to zero, the short-term interest rate, the one that we control. We've then worked with banks to try to increase their lending. And we have a whole set of programs. Let me just talk about one. We have a program that lends to investors who want to purchase consumer or small business loans from banks. And that puts more money into the system. And what we found is that this program has brought down auto loan interest rates. We've helped finance 1.6 million auto loans. It's helped a lot in small business loans. We've financed about 600,000 small business loans. And so we have actually intervened in the market to try and get the credit markets working again. So we had too much credit, it was too risky, it was too excessive. Now we got to bring things back to sort of a nice middle ground.
All right, let's talk about what happened here and what he said. You notice that Ben said, well, you know, credit was in some ways too easy. Oh no, Ben, the entire problem was that credit was too easy. We granted credit to people who couldn't pay it back. In fact, as this graph shows, that's exactly what happened. We went from a long-term stable rate of credit in the society compared to GDP of about 150% to 350% in a relatively short period of time. To understand what this means to the economy, you must take a look at GDP and how this credit demand, that is the availability of easy money, if you will, has pulled forward the demand for goods and services. That's not very hard to do because the Bureau of Economic Analysis makes the data that you need available to the public. You add up all of the GDP over the period from 1981 to present, and you come up with about $217 trillion. You take the amount of debt as a percentage of GDP, and it goes from $4.5 trillion to about $50 trillion over that same period of time. That is an addition net of $45 trillion that is still outstanding. This does not count your credit card that you paid off, doesn't count your car loan that you took out and paid for. It only counts the debt that remains in the system outstanding at the present time. Well, we had $200 and some trillion worth of GDP, and over that same period of time, $45 trillion worth of debt added. That implies that we have pulled forward about 20% of GDP. That is, 20% of the supposed economic growth has been false. What Bernanke has not spoken to, and the reason he didn't answer the question is because if you look at when this graph went nuts, it happened starting in the 1990s and into the 2000s. When he was at the Fed, along with Alan Greenspan, Chairman Greenspan retired and Ben Bernanke took his place, but he was there during the time that Greenspan cranked up credit during the 1990s, starting really after the 1987 stock market crash. We haven't seen a solution to this problem because the solution to this problem is to force all of the bad debt out in the open and default it. That means that many of his friends, bankers, would go bankrupt. It also means a lot of Americans would go bankrupt. But by clearing this debt from the system, we would restore the conditions that are necessary to have sustainable economic growth once again in the American economy. We so far have refused to do this. But until we do, we cannot have a sustainable recovery or a way in order to grow our way out of this mess. You see, in order for us to get back to 150% through the growth of wages and productive output, we would have to find some way to grow the average wage in America by approximately 100%. That is, you'd have to roughly double the pay of every person in this country. That's not going to happen. We've sent so many of our manufacturing and other jobs over to China and Vietnam that that's no longer an option for us. So what option is left, Ben? If you say that we can solve this problem through more easy credit, aren't we just trying to blow a bigger bubble? Aren't we just trying to load up the drunk with yet more cases of whiskey? I challenge you to come on Blog Talk Radio and debate this point with me at any time. For that matter, I challenge you to appear down here at Ticker Central. Or I'll come up there with a camera, we'll stick it in both of our faces, and we'll go ahead and we'll have the debate that way. We can put a lav mic on each of us, and we'll see whether or not we can resolve this issue. My guess is you'll refuse. Just like you refuse to answer the question on PBS. But the American people deserve to know what happened. And the truth is right here in this graph. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot have a durable, sustainable economic recovery until this imbalance is corrected. That's the facts, regardless of what the stock market does this week or next. I'm your ticker guy, and that's my opinion.